Instructions and appeals to an assembly of the faithful. It is hardly possible that we have here a continuous whole. The thoughts, however, harmonize well enough, and the changes give little trouble. Now, some of these things, if you know more about the culture, it's not as necessary for all this stuff to be said to you. When I talked about the Princess of Cups, people, one of the things about her was that people, this it's like there was a lot of gaps in our our communication, that we didn't need to say the extra stuff, but for other people to understand it better, we kind of did. 1. As so often, the sovereign authority of Ahura, his reign over the hearts and in the minds of his faithful worshippers, is the leading theme. That sovereign power, when it is established, will produce every good thing with it, and repress every evil, and the composer prays that he may never pause at any moment in his efforts to bring that kingdom on. 2. Accordingly, as the foremost of objects, he beseeches for both its blessings and its protection, and names Automata as the especial representative of Ahura, in this case, to grant the kingdom as a realm established in spiritual wealth, and whose first effect should be the glory of God through the agency of the holy dispensations in men. 3. The spirit of the Dana is public and prophetic, rather than occult and mysterious. The people therefore gather to hear gathas recited, and religious harangues delivered as on political occasions, and all the more because the mantras are declared to be the results of direct inspiration from Ahura. Mantra is kind of like the word mantra, so, and kind of like the word spell, but there's certain connotations with spells, either it's atheistic or it's, like people are worshiping objects or something. So, hence the use of words like that. Inspiration from Ahura. Yeah, because there's a difference between what people compose and inspiration. So, 4. The present recitations are invocations calling for the 4 energizing immortals, the guiding order, active piety, inspiring benevolence, and the power-wielding kingdom, and in using these names the multitude are also beseeching, by the voice of their spokesman, for the Ratu, the Saoshant, cried for by the kine, looked for by Asha himself, and promised by Ahura. Asha is in righteousness. 5. And the men who press this prayer are, each of them for the moment, Nukit, as the Ratu himself, wise in his homage, he seeks to gain the kine, like the ideal husbandman, both as property and as emblem. And he desires to establish the Ratu understood as a person or as the law which may judge between the two sides, Yasna 31:2, and by the expulsion of the evil give quiet to the land, Yasna 46 verse 4 and 53 verse 9. 6. Declaring Ahura to be the awarder of the highest good and deepest evil. 7. He calls on him to grant the eternal to the rewarding immortals, not named in the former verse, but only by means of the inspired teachings. 8. And as these inculcations are effective for himself, he will declare forth their threats and promises to others, being repaid for zealous fidelity in the very act. 9. Recalling the hopes of vengeance, he beseeches Ahura to give forth a sign or instrument from the holy fire, which may settle the disputes by the forged blade of justice. 10. For he declares that man who mercilessly assaults his adherents in the opposing interest, Siyasna 32 verse 10, etc., is inherently and originally perverted in his motives, a very son of the lie, and of the seed of Akoman. 11. While in terms he addresses Ahura, he in reality challenges the devotion of the chieftains, as he calls aloud to the deity. 12. Here a temptation of Zarathustra is narrated, as in the Vendidad here, dwelling on his youth, there on his maturer manhood. But the verse shows marked signs of later age. 13. And the soul of the righteous is encouraged by the recorded example. He shall come off the conqueror, as Zarathustra did. 14. But the Karpans, the priestly chiefs of them, maybe, getting rumbling the tumbly, of the opposing party, following the typical destroyer, as in Yasna 32, would bring the world to ruin and the creatures to hell. 15. The true disciples will, however, infallibly receive the promised recompense. Well, perhaps innocence a better term, because God will reward in an infallible way, but if we refer to individuals as infallible rather than, well, they could have chosen to make mistakes, but they didn't. The latter says a lot more than the whole infallible thing. 16. The Masum, the 14 Masum idea, it really translates as the innocence. But, anyway, 16. Different language, by the way, Arabic. And as for that kiste, conceived by Mazda, to give the saving knowledge in the sacred verse, the king of the realm had acquired it. It will be stored in the memory of the faithful priests under his care and rule, and he will give his subjects a good worship in accordance with it. See Yasna 49, verse 7. 17. A female saint, also illustrious in rank, is celebrated with honorable mention. She is, as it were, the kiste in her person, and she is named in this connection. 18. Another devoted friend arrests the speaker's eye as he stands in the assembly. 19. And still another. 20. Then, as if taking in all with his view, and with an expression which shows his identification with the people, he declares that the archangels are of one mind with Mazda in bestowing spiritual blessings, the chief of which are inspired words, the source of their discipline, and the guide of their hopes. 21. And with assurances as to the greatness of spiritual blessings implied in all that he has said, he prays Ahura all the more earnestly to grant them to his elect. 22. And he declares that Ahura knows and observes the man who fulfills every command that he has uttered, as well as he believes every doctrine which he has divulged, and that, knowing him, he also marks him as the object of his grace. And he ends by expressing once more his desire to approach the bountiful immortals, not as naming them alone, but naming them, as we may well suppose, with the full appreciation of all that is meant by the sacred words which belong to them as names. Translation 1. The good government of Ahura is to be chosen among all wished for things, as that lot which most of all brings on our happiness. Actions that oppress us it opposes, through the holy order which pervades it, and with the pious zeal of its true servants. Therefore, O great Creator, let me produce and help bring on that sovereign power, which is the best for us at every present hour. 2. And first, I will ask for these two blessings of your own, O thou great Creator, and thou his righteous order. And I also ask of thee our piety personified as well, and grant me this, your sovereign rule over our desired wealth, to give and to preserve it, and likewise those spiritual blessings which are advantageous for our worship of Ahura, through the inspiration of his good mind within the soul. 3. And it is not I alone who thus appeal to you, I speak for all, who are guarded in the ceremonial and moral actions of your law, and by those inspired words which proceed from the tongue of thy good mind, as he speaks with thy matra. Yea, these are all assembling, each to hear you, of whom thou, O Ahura Mazda, art the foremost guide and light. 4. And they cry aloud to thee, O Mazda, I speaking with them, and in their name. Where is the promised Lord of our thrift, the embodied law, saving us from the most dreaded dangers that we fear, the thrift Lord of our ready zeal? Where does he stand to show us mercy? Whither are thy righteousness and the bountiful our piety approaching? From what direction comes thy best mind to inspire and to guide? And whence, again, O great Creator, thy sovereign power to be our ruler in defense? 5. And it is the tiller of the earth who acts this of thee, O Ahura, thy chosen saint himself. He has access all of thee, striving to discover how he may gain to himself the sacred kine, and with all wealth and herds besides, and he would seek this, moved by the motives which flow from thy righteous order and thy cause, upright as he is in actions, and wise in self-humbling worship of that one who, as a righteous ruler, has appointed a just, controlling guide for those whom he has made. 6. An impartial answer to his question and to solve his doubt, I now declare the truth. He who gives to this good citizen that which is better than the good, yea, he who bestows on him in accordance with his religious choice, is our Ahura Mazda, and not a false god at the top of us. No demiurge here, no counter-creator. And this will he bestow through his divine authority, established in preparation here, while on the withholder of the sacrifice, who offers nothing to his cause, he will send worse than the evil, and that not here alone, but in the last turning of the creation in its course. 7. And as thou wilt bestow thus graciously on him, so grant me also, O thou most bountiful Spirit Mazda, thou who hast made both the kine and the waters and the plants, for her support, both immortality and welfare, these two eternal powers, and through thy good mind in the doctrine, which is revealed through his inspired words. 8. Yea, grant me these two inseparable gifts for having them in store. I will speak for thee, O Mazda, because to the man of understanding one should declare for thee that which is the woe to the wicked, but salvation to him who has maintained the holy order in thy folk and in his soul, for he is repaid indeed and rejoiced by the matra who declares it to the wise. 9. And when I shall speak, I will declare for you that mental keenness which reaches the decision, and which thou hast bestowed upon the two striving sides in thy satisfying word. And this I will announce by means of thy flaming fire. Yea, I will declare it, for the bestowal of that sword of justice which is forged from steel and wrought for both the worlds, and for the wounding of the wicked with its blade. Mayest thou, O Ahura Mazda, bless and prosper thine avenging saint. 10. Yea, let thy believer wound the wicked to the quick. For he who, totally estranged from this our holy rule, O Mazda, seeks to destroy my life, is a son of the lies creation, and belongs to the miscreants, but has
me.
I call on Asha,
thy righteous order, to be my help.
and may he come with thy good blessing. 11.
And ye, who throng at the great assembly, it is of you I speak while, with my lips, I now address the Lord.
Who, O Ahura, is a loyal friend to Spitama, to Zarathustra, who has asked his question of the divine righteousness,
as he approached,
but whom is the bounteous piety
received and cherished,
are who has been regarded as upright and fitted for the great cause of thy good mind. 12.
How is worthy? What I ask for Zarathustra was ever such, and from earliest days he was no polluted wretch.
Padarast never ganged his ear, nor Kavi follower, on this
temptation
bridge of earth, when his body was
maturely
grown, when they both hastened to him with the bosom's impure power. 13.
And he will be likewise victorious on the veritable judgment bridge, for
the righteous man's conscience will truly crush the wicked man's
spirit,
while his soul rages fiercely on the open Kindat bridge as he strives by his actions and his tongue's
cursing speech
to reach
and to pollute
Asha's paths where the faithful
souls come.
14.
And as are those lost spirits, so are our foes.
No friends to the creatures are the Karpans,
not granting
complete
harvests
from the fields with complete
pasture
for the kine,
chief objects for our prayer,
bringing woe by their deeds and their teachings, and they who deliver these
beings whom they lead,
at the last, by their doctrine, in the home of the lie. 15. But this is the reward which Zarathustra declared before
to his friends who counsel with Asha,
and are fitted for the cause. Ahura Mazda will come the first into his song home, Garudman, and then these gifts will be given you by the good mind
within you,
and with blessings for the cause of the righteous order
and his hosts.
16.
And one of you, the greatest, has indeed attained to that wisdom which is thus blessed with the promise.
Kava Vistaspa has reached it in the realm of our great cause of devotion, and moved in his toil by the chance of the good mind,
who speaks in the Mantra.
Yea, he hath attained to that wisdom which the bountiful Ahura conceived in accordance with Asha, thus to teach us salvation. 17.
And not alone amidst our princes hath sanctity been marked.
Frasha Ostra, the Havogva, hath presented a blessed and endeavored form,
his child,
and may Ahura Mazda, who has the sovereign power, grant her
to us,
who is so much to be beloved, and for the
progress of the
good religion do ye, O ye people, receive her with desire, and for the gaining of Asha,
she will help the great cause.
18. Yea, that
holy
wisdom, O Gamaspa, the Havogva, these
pious throngs
are choosing through the righteousness as the
true
splendors of riches,
these pious men who are
gaining the kingdom where the good mind doth govern, and grant me also, O Mazda, that which these with glad wishes receive from thy grace. 19.
And this prayer is already beforehand heard.
This established sovereign power, the heroic
Kava Vistaspa has given.
O ma idyo ma, the spit ama, who is wise through the religion, and who seeks the true life. He is granting it to us. Yea, he has pronounced the laws of Ahura our Maker, and declared that which is for our life's actions,
beyond all other things,
best. 20. And that gift of blessedness for you all,
the bountiful immortals,
with one consent, in sympathy to help us,
are disposed
to grant,
and may they likewise make
the holy order
firm
for us through the good mind,
in our folk,
and may they reveal to us the words with which piety likewise
speaks our truths,
and receiving sacrifice with homage
from our praises,
may they seek for us Ahura Mazda's grace. 21.
Yea, this Kava Vistaspa,
The man of Aramaete, is bounteous, and with understanding in his words and his actions, and as a reward may Ahura give him that righteousness which is blessed,
but
with the religion
alone,
and that sovereign power which is established through the good mind,
and his folk,
and this same blessing would I pray from his grace. 22. For Ahura Mazda knoweth the man whose best gift for the sacrifice is given unto me, and from the motive of righteousness,
and in thankfulness for all, and in prayer for yet still further grace,
I will worship
the eternal ones.
Yea, I will worship those who have ever lived, and who still live, by their own
holy
names, and to their
thrones
will I draw near with my praise. And see, by, not worship the creations as if they're gods or something, but mention them respectfully as part of evoking yourself towards the seats of power, or our qualities, or whatever you want to call it, that that these individuals were of. Now, we are turning back to, we're in the commentary of salvation is announced as universal for believers. And got M recalls Zend Avesta ya Geva ente. The good man mind's life. But we're 57. Thinking righteousness, or I will. And the Pahlavi for the splendor part has Regye Homand, not as rendering as merely, but as a philological analogon, otherwise riches. And we start here on yea to this one in verse 2, not as ahma'e, but more naturally mean to this one. In the previous verse, it is desirable to render it in the same way here. And endowed with the glory, give, it is to this last degree improbable that Havathroya, Havathrava, the Y is maybe miswritten for the V, and indicating the condition of ease and comfort here. The easy man is the furthest possible from the thoughts of the composer. The best of all things makes a word kindred to haveng, or havan, appropriate here. And kiki is, if it's an imperative, may mean guard over. but the Pahlavi translator gives us the better view. He has lak padakino. Naryosang has tavam prakaseya. Geldner's kiki thwa is important. And so that was a note for the reveal. And thwa is thy property. And the Pahlavi has padmano, thoughts of wisdom. So oversimplification of the translation, which is typical with translations, at least in parts, when you're talking about spiritual things at the very least. But later in the verse, we're lining up more with the Pahlavi. And Ayara lives every day. We're moving on to 3, the good he will show. So what does it say around there? This expression seems to be equal to the summum bonum. So also worse than the evil is the ultimate of woes. And then we have something that reminds us of Yasa 28, verse 3. And then maybe we ask the question, does ha'eth yang mean eternal? With every passage in which it occurs considered. Some things certainly have meaning that varies a little bit different. And later in the verse, offer thine. So thwavant may, however, like mavant, simply express the personal pronoun here. The position of a redro is awkward if thwavant equals thy. Where dwells Ahura, thyself, O Mazda, beneficent, wise, and bountiful, but Aredra is almost a special term for a zealous partisan. The Pahlavi, towards the end of the verse, the faithful citizen, has kup danaki, indicating a meaning which would be better to apply to her than the one given, which cannot be applied to him. And okay, in verse 4, okay, yeah, you guard and nurture as just so by thy hand such things occur, right? But God doesn't have a hand like human beings have a hand, so but then we hint at the holy order, the holy fire of the altar is the symbol of the order. Gamat may be rendered as an improper subjunctive here, but we have at the end 47, 2 notes here. So the Pahlavi, and that to which renders justice to the wicked and also to the righteous. And this thy fire is burning, since by it the strength of him who lives in righteousness is maintained when that violence which approaches with a good intention comes to me. And the supreme Yasna 31 verse 8 renders this word, the word around that as vor ne master. So, and when is rewarding, still in verse 5, literally, when thou didst render deeds provided with rewards, we are forced to put the action in the past on account of zath o e. But the influences were originally set in motion were to have their issue in the end of the world. And he renders great virtue, hunara, literally, and bring about as Pahlavi translation to the same sense as necessarily, otherwise humar would generally mean skill. Naryosang has tava. Ganeshu, the Pahlavi, would here be recognized by all reasonable scholars as striking in its closeness. The word ratus, the regulations mentioned in verse 6, reminds one of the work of the ratu for the afflicted kine, and the last changing, which shall complete the Frashakard, he or his representatives will appear as the last Saoshant, introducing millennial blessedness. And by no man may deceive. I render the Pahlavi here in evidence. Through thee, O bountiful spirit, the changing comes from wickedness to goodness, and it comes likewise through Harmaz's supremacy within a good mind, through whose action the progress of Ahara Yi's settlements is furthered. Those which the Master is instructing with a perfect mind, and in which this thy wisdom shall in no wise be deceived thereby. And in the next verse, who of thou, so 7, as the kind thought little of her deliverer, see Yasna 29 verse 9, so Sir Asha, the obedient host, is here represented as inquiring to the antecedents of the newly appointed prophet, but he asks more properly concerning the settlements from which he comes than the lands. Ka'atha is not the Havyo, an origin external to that of other chieftains, is not at all necessarily indicated by the question. And the Pahlavi for a strong tormentor in verse 8 there sees a denominative in Isoya, Isova, Y for V. It is a denominative in the Altir an Iches verbum. It differs, however, as to root. I offer an alternative to its sense. An open tormentor, that is, I openly torment the wicked, even as much as I desire, do I torment them. Gunrak Minavad. And we must be cautious in accepting the statement that the Pahlavi translators attempted to be literal, because certainly we see variation from that. Here's one which is free and far from erroneous. Atuno avo aharubo min valaman I og homan ito iglas raminan. The Pahlavi here shows a correct root in the middle, for thy kingdom in verse 8 here. And does ma equals sma, and so long as I can be of the mind, seem hardly expressed here. Observe the nearly parallel construction in verse 8.